Good morning. Hi, everyone. Thank you, James, for this lovely introduction. I'm so glad to be here on Creative Mornings and very grateful to whoever is taking the time to wake up early or even stay awake with us today, depending on where you are in the world. I hope everyone can hear me clearly because I am so excited to talk transit with you guys today. And I'd like to first start off by pointing out that I am wearing the color of the day, which is orange. And that is not something I do often. So there you go. That's for you, Jane. So I would like to first start off by saying that the theme of course, this morning's talk is transit, which definitely does imply movement, right? And this definitely feels like a little bit of a tease, especially during this time when what we're basically doing is staying indoors, right? And social distancing. Because in 2020, this is what transit has looked like, right? For so many of us, transiting between rooms in our houses, in our homes. But after bringing up the word with a few friends, I realized that it actually means, different things to different people. And so while we're talking today, I'd love for you guys to actually think about what it means to you and to just sort of share it with us in the chat. I did a quick survey as well, and I asked people on social media, what is the first impression that comes to their minds when they hear the word transit? And so I would like to share with you a few of their responses. So if you look over here, you're going to see, oh wait, 1 second, here we go. You're going to see in different sizes of fonts, the more frequent responses that I got. And you can see the most popular were airports, temporary, time, journey. And so for a lot of people, airports is where they said they spend most of their time in, right? Others found transit to be a place where no one really belongs and is just sort of like a pass-by to their final destination, sort of like being in limbo. Some said freedom because they find it to be unplanned and very spontaneous. And so this really got me thinking because this question kind of reveals the differences in the perceptions that people have, right? What we think is understood from the meaning of the word transit, I found for many people had a very personal, unique, and even reflective definition. And so I would like to share with you guys what the word transit is from my perspective. And in my perspective, transit's actually the promise of adventure that's spread out ahead. It is not just about the destination, but the journey of actually getting there. And being in transit for me is total freedom. It's the ultimate opportunity to just be myself. It's really kind of discovering things in myself that I had no idea existed. And so you can imagine just how excited and what I tend to look like when I am in my own travel transit, right? And I'm sure many of you, of course, look the same, looking or waking up to go to work versus waking up to travel. And so say that you are going from country A to country B, right? There are so many things that you experience along the way. There's immigration lines, there's taxis, there's roads, there's attractions, there's strangers. Those are all the spots and interactions that exist at the boundaries between here and there. And without them, there would be little mystery, right? But too often we are in a rush to get to our destinations that we miss out on the joys of the journey. And I am guilty of this, of course, sometimes too. And so if you really just slow down and just pay attention to these transition zones, and you just think of them maybe as, destinations of their own right and not just bridges up, to something up ahead, then you really widen your vision. And that is my first transit takeaway. Slow down and enjoy the in-between world. And for me, this is what 2020 has been all about. I mean, despite all of the challenges and the heartaches of this year, there have been some silver linings. Earlier in March of just this year, I actually took a trip to New Zealand, which was planned for 2 weeks. I hadn't been back in Oakland for almost 15 years, and so was just incredibly excited to be there again. And at the time, New Zealand had just kind of confirmed its sixth case of COVID, which is a really small number relative to, the reported cases that were elsewhere in the world. And so everyone was just told to be extra careful, which we were. And then about a week or so later, the Dubai International Airspace was closed, following similar shutdowns all over the world. And my flight back home was canceled. And so New Zealand then went into this super strict level 4 lockdown. And that's when everything in the country closed down except essentials, and people were urged to stay in their bubbles. And those were the people that you could basically remain in contact with during COVID. And so, like an estimated almost like 100,000 international visitors, I was stuck, right? Stuck in transit and not able to go back home. And better yet, with no end date in sight. And, now before I start seeing kind of everyone roll their eyes and tell me, wait, are you kind of complaining about being stuck in one of the most gorgeous places on this planet? Absolutely not. If anything, that period of transit in my life is something I would not have wished to have had in any other way. But the fact and the reality is there were so many unknowns. Not knowing when this crisis would end, or when I'd be returning back home, or when my business, which I probably dedicated every waking minute to, would bounce back. And so my life was in transit. And so really, despite all of these challenges, I tried to always remember to look for the light and use all of my strengths and draw on whatever reserves I had to keep going. So for over a month of level 4 lockdown, like I said, the strictest, I stayed indoors and went out only to buy essentials. Trips to the supermarket became my cherished transits, as did short walks around the block. And I too caved in and joined the Banana Bread Club. I also took part in the Getty Challenge, which was incredible fun. And for those of you that don't know it, just looking at this little post over here, the Getty Museum in LA actually asked people to recreate famous art paintings using objects from home and then to just post them and share them online. And so people of all ages, they posed in, homemade costumes with their kids or their pets. They made backdrops of their living rooms. They used towels, toilet paper, and then just posted them online. And this challenge went viral. And posts were absolutely hilarious. I mean, you could really see the power of art and creativity pulling people together. It brought art lovers from all over the world who were just perfect internet strangers and were now in some way connected. And so I decided to join in on the fun and started digging into my suitcase for whatever I could put together. And so here are a few of what I came up with. This here is the girl with the pearl earring, which is something you've probably seen before. And then this one over here is Edvard Munch's The Scream. And this is what I think any of us look like when anyone gets closer than 2 meters. And I'm actually proud to say that this particular recreation was actually chosen as a favorite by the Getty Museum and is now featured in an actual book that they published. And that's called Off the Walls. So I'm definitely super excited. Now, although I won't really be taking up a career in recreating paintings, it really was a reminder of the power of imagination. And so I just kind of want to remind everyone of that. That's my second transit takeaway. Never underestimate your creative powers. Explore things that give you fulfillment. Now, I mentioned earlier that my trip to New Zealand was supposed to be for 2 weeks, right? And then lockdown happened, and 2 weeks actually became 1 month, and then 2, and then 3, and finally months. And yes, you did hear me right, 6 months. During this time, New Zealand had actually come out of lockdown and life was practically back to normal. And I'm talking no social distancing, no masks, no gloves. All the shops and the businesses were running again and things were in motion. And so my transit here actually took a big pivot. because I was finally able to transit the country that I had been itching to do all of this time. And this is me now transiting in Middle Earth. At this stage, New Zealand borders were still closed to international travel. And, nothing outside of Australia and the Pacific. So can you imagine just how much energy there was to just get out and wander? And there was a huge campaign to really just inspire Kiwis to travel domestically and explore their own backyard. And so they would say, do something new, New Zealand. And so I did. I bought a pair of hiking boots and pants that weren't jeans, and I wandered out of my comfort zone and all over the North Island, connecting with Earth, camping under the stars in the wilderness, hiking the mountains, and enjoying just complete silence, which is very, I'd say, different from the concrete jungle that I'm used to in Dubai. No Wi-Fi, no crowds. It was like looking at the world with different eyes. And so that is my third takeaway. The joy of life actually comes from our encounters with new experiences. And that there is actually a quote from the movie Into the Wild. If you haven't watched that yet, that's pretty much, the experience that I had during my time in New Zealand. And I know it is so hard to find new passions, right? We often make our own cages and kind of feel like we can't make progress or try new things. We might get inspired on one or two occasions, but then we get stuck. Now, where do we get stuck? We get stuck in the meh, as you can see in this photo over here. And I actually love the way that this phrase is described by the author, who's actually a psychologist. She says that the meh section, which is right here in the middle, is when our current situation is not intolerable and we're not, miserable enough to change, but we're not happy or fulfilled either. We feel meh, right? And so in her opinion, the meh can be the most dangerous place to be, because the meh feelings, they're actually masking more difficult emotions such as fear or anxiety. And we distract ourselves sometimes with like everyday routine stuff just because we want to avoid change. And it's really only when we hit rock bottom is when and where the change happens. And so the idea is to actually stop the meh and to sort of prevent it from holding you back and stifling your own creativity. Find out what those stresses are in your life and then just isolate them and replace them with alternatives. Have you time to figure that out, because only when you fill your cup, only when you fill your cup first, can you really feel liberated and re-energized to help yourself and those who are around you. And so after almost 6 months of being stranded in New Zealand, I finally got the green light to go back home, but not without its caveats. I had to follow the new transit rules that were now in place and were changing practically by the minute. Airlines were running at limited capacity. COVID tests became a requirement pretty much wherever you wanted to go. Airport shops were closed. I mean, you would be walking and the place was completely deserted, which was very different from when I, got to New Zealand 6 months earlier. The spontaneity of travel was gone. And my transit experience was now dramatically changed and altered. But nonetheless, I was very grateful even for my altered transit. And so finally, I want to say that in my search for creative space, I became even more so grateful for the company that I was surrounded by, my bubble, as we called it in New Zealand, and for the friends and the other connections that I actually made along the way. And so this pandemic, in some way, it binds us together. It is a bond that is truly unshakable. And so my final takeaway is be grateful for those around you. And so on that note, I would like to leave you with this quote, which is actually one of my favorites. The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. Thank you for listening. And please let me know if you have any questions.
Oh my gosh, Nada, that was amazing. Can we give Nada another round of visual applause, please?
Thank you.
Oh, that was so uplifting. You just give me 1 second, Nada. And if you guys have got any more questions, just pop them in the chat and we'll ask them. I want to give you some feedback. I was taking notes rapidly and copying and pasting. Just some of the Creative Mornings responses to what does transit mean. Geeta, for her, Geeta, transit means movement. From Badran, transit means memories. Oh, I love that. And between here and there. And Randa says, transit from sanity to ... So I just thought there were some beautiful reactions, and we had amazing reactions to your artwork, particularly the scream and the girl with the pearl earring. That was just extraordinary, Nada. Thank you so much. So I think the first question is from me, and then it's followed up from James, is what's your banana bread recipe, and are you starting a COVID cookbook? Nada.
Oh my God. Oh, I definitely wouldn't go that far. I mean, the banana bread was probably the one creation that I'm proud to show. And I would say the one good thing that also happened in COVID is that I was actually living with a baker. And all of, I'd say, my baking needs were met. And of course, was happy to try any of the creations that they came up with. So I'm happy to pass on their recipe because I'm pretty sure it's way better. But yeah, I mean, cookbook, maybe not just yet, but definitely maybe a Getty challenge book.
Well, there you go. We could you do your art with the cookery. I mean, that's amazing. We had a question from Altamash, and I believe it's when you were talking about New Zealand. And Altamash says, did the government help you stay wise? Did it help the visitors stay wise while you were there?
Absolutely. I mean, if I was to really kind of, highlight one particular part of the New Zealand shutdown or lockdown that happened, was just how effective they were in just communicating. You know, you would, I swear to God, wake up in the morning and they would give you all the numbers, you know, where everything was happening, what you needed to do, constant reminders to just stay home, you know, lock down, stay in your bubble, only go out if you need essentials. But then there was also this really lovely message that they also added, which was, remember just to also be kind to one another, because during this time, it is incredibly difficult, of course, for people to manage, and especially those who might be, you know, a little older, might not be able to go out during this, you know, COVID pandemic. And so it was just such a lovely message altogether, and, you know, was really something well communicated from their end.
Wonderful. We had a question from James, and it really connects back to last month's Creative Mornings. We had Dr. Upasana Gala, who's this amazing neuropsychologist, come on, and she was telling us about our wonderful brains and how to keep them, you know, fit and working brilliantly. And James asks you, how did the slowdown impact your brain?
Well, it definitely, I mean, I would say it did in various ways. You know, not being able to be out meant that you weren't really communicating with others, you weren't seeing things visually. And so that, you know, by itself is something that kind of slows you down. And the only really way to correct that is to actually then be outside. So it, of course, then wasn't something that was recommended. So the way to sort of go about it was to just go online, perhaps find new ways to engage. Zoom, of course, was, you know, the best thing that happened in 2020, because you could really just connect with people from all over the globe and still keep up to date with things that you were missing out on in the outside. So that's something I think that was helpful in replacing. And then you kind of also started seeing all of these like online tools booming as well, right? Like these, you know, training websites like Coursera and similar other ones where you could just do an online course. So even if you couldn't be outside learning, you could just sign up for something, you know, in a sort of virtual classroom and learn those things then and there.
Yeah, great, thank you. And we've got a lot of people wishing that they had been in New Zealand during lockdown. Our summer was pretty long here in the UAE. I think we'd all agree that was, it was pretty hot. And we've got a lot more questions. Dana says, do you think transit will ever be the same again? Traveling, transit.
Well, I mean, it's so hard to imagine transit and travel in the future, or at least in the near future, because I'll tell you, coming back on that plane from New Zealand to Dubai, something like it was a 20-hour flight, having to wear the mask all the time, and then of course just be extra careful not to communicate, not to interact, that really, I mean, it took out a lot of the experience for me. And it's something that I realize obviously is necessary, but it's not, you know, the same experience that, you know, I've known all this time. And so it's going to be a modified version. And I think we just need to, you know, accept that and just find ways to, you know, make light of it.
Great. We've got a few more questions, and I think we've got time for all of them. But just before I continue with the questions, can we all just say hi to Asma's cat? Can we have the cat back up again, please, Asma? He's gorgeous, and he's the right color. But then look at him. Look at that cat. Asma, can we find out the cat's name? You can pop it in the chat or come on.
Adopted him recently. We didn't give him a name yet. He's either Milo or Mowgli.
Okay, Milo or Mowgli. Okay, can we have a vote in the chat, please? Milo or Mowgli? Milo or Mowgli, while that's going on. Right, so I'll get back to the questions. Are we going to name the cat? Asma, I've just taken over the naming of your cat, sorry. Michael, Nada, back to you, Nada. Michael says, is transit also between present thinking and a change in the way we think?
I would think so. Because, I mean, transit is movement, right? Movement in many different ways. It could be, of course, physical movement, but it could also just be mental movement as well. Thinking something and then maybe learning something else might get you to, you know, broaden your horizons and then just see things in a new light. So I would definitely see it even in that way. A lot of times people think of it, yes, like an airport kind of transit, right? Because that's kind of what you tend to see online or when you're booking flights or that sort of stuff, but it could apply to so many different things as well.
Wonderful, thank you. Ahmed from his iPhone says, Nada, if you had to choose another place to live, to be stuck in, I'm sorry, let me repeat that. If you had to choose another place to be stuck in, which country would you choose?
Oh man, that's a difficult one as well. I mean, I think that it was, you know, entirely, you know, to my benefit, the fact that I was in New Zealand and, you know, stuck there in such a fantastic country and of course a gorgeous one as well. But if I had to be stuck somewhere else, I would probably want to be stuck home because, you know, living abroad for so long really took its toll on me in so many different ways. Living out of a suitcase for 6 months. I came into New Zealand when it was like summer and had, you know, just really light clothing packed and all that, and then left when it was like the dead of winter. So just kind of really having those comforts around me really would be probably my preference if I was to do it again. But I'd say New Zealand still tops the list. I think we can all agree.
We think so. Did you see any hobbits while you were there?
I did see hobbits.
Oh.
Of course, I am a Lord of the Rings fan and did go to the Shire and visited their homes. I mean, it is absolutely stunning. If you were not, even, I mean, for people who are not fans of the movie, you have to go see the Shire. The entire space, Middle Earth, is just one place, which is just purely magical. And it was really inspiring to be in.
Wonderful, wonderful. I just got this one comment from Geeta, which I think really sums up Creative Mornings and what you talked about today. Because there's some comments and questions about the Met Zone, which I love. I absolutely love the Met Zone. And Geeta said, we would not have met all you lovely people if not for COVID. So this year is not all meh. I think we'll give a little round of applause for Geeta's anti-meh. Nice one, Geeta. Now let's get down to the real business of the day, naming the cat. Okay, can someone keep count? Because I'm rubbish at this, right? We got 1, 2,
I kept count, cat.
Yeah, tell me.
So Milo got 7. I was some insistent from some people. He looks like Milo. I think he's Milo. And then Mowgli got 3.
Oh.
So Asma, it's your call, but we need to know.
We got to know, Asma. Can you make your mind up now?
At the house, we all like Milo more. Go Milo!
Yeah! So we named the cat. We named the cat.
This is the first ever Creative Mornings. This was a Creative Mornings first globally, naming a cat during a talk.
This year it's definitely not all meh.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm just going to scroll for questions. Just for the last few comments on here. Yeah, Milo is getting a lot of votes. Dubai Jiggy says, hang on, I've had my best experiences in transit. Maha says, I got stuck in California, then the UK, so wasn't complaining, but she can relate to the suitcase. And I think that's just beautiful. I'm just sorry if I've missed your question, anyone, please excuse me. I think we've got pretty much everybody in there. And thank you so much.
Kat, there was a question that was on here asking Nada if she had suggestions on how to get out of the meh zone.
Ooh, nice.
Ooh, out of the meh. Oh, okay. Well, there are definitely many ways to do that. And I'm actually one of those people that will try to do as many things and then see what sticks. And just over the, last, I'd say month or so, I've just been doing completely random things around Dubai, going to film school, going to hike in, different parts of the country, even taking a painting class. I'll happily show you my result. But, the entire thing is just, based on trying new things and then seeing what sticks. It might not be, something that you've expected, and might not be something that you'll make, a long-term hobby, but it just kind of opens your mind to all the potential options that are there. And I think it's often maybe even difficult to do if you're trying to maybe do this, with friends, because a lot of people might not be in the same zone, might not want to get around to doing the same stuff. So at that point, I would say, do it on your own. Make new friends, right? Because that's how these things then become a part of you, a part of your transit and your experience altogether. And of course, call me anytime. I'll be more than happy to just join you in any of those experiences, because I think it's just something that's rewarding for everyone.
Wonderful. Wonderful. We've got another one. Have we got time,
yes.
James?
Yes.
We're good for time? Okay. Ishita says, where can we learn more about the meh zone theory? Are there any books on this? Are you going to write one, Nada? With your COVID cookbook?
Maybe, yes, exactly. It'll be a very, very interesting book altogether. I'll have a lot of art, a lot of cooking, and of course, the psychology part as well. Well, there is actually a lot of literature on this, and I'll happily share even a link of where I got this from. This is from a psychologist who's put up a website with a lot of, remedies at home sort of suggestions for people to get out of the meh zone. And she explains it in such a way which is so true. I mean, you kind of listen to it and you're thinking, this is me, right? So I like the way that she's actually made it so relevant to actually what people tend to really be thinking these days, and applied it in such a way where you come to a solution.
Wonderful.
So I'll find a way, of course, I'll share it with James, and then maybe we can put that up somewhere so that people can get access to the website.
Absolutely.
We can post it. We can post it on the on social media and add that link. So
everything we do on Creative Mornings, if you Google Creative Mornings and then the word Dubai, we actually have a space there where we post everything up as well. Hey, Nada, I've got a quick question, and we've got a few more coming in, but I got a quick question. Looking back, 20 years ago, as you were going through schooling and as you were thinking about career, and then all the stuff that's happened, even with your own business in the last 4 years and where we are today, could you have imagined that this creative impulse that you're demonstrating would play such a big role in your life?
Honestly, no. I did not imagine this many years ago. And if you kind of even just look back at my history and, what I studied and what I later did in the corporate world, it was very different to the amount of creativity that I apply today on a day-to-day basis. I wake up in the morning and, my head's just buzzing with ideas. And, it's something that I think, honestly, just keeps me going. There's no sort of way to explain it other than it doesn't feel like work. It feels like a big, big part of me that I just you know, find natural in a way. And I just am happy to spend countless hours dedicating time to. So not something, yeah, to answer that, not something I thought I would be doing before, and just kind of happened in the course of a few years. It was not like the eureka moment that you sometimes hear about, but it was definitely something that, you know, kind of blossomed and became something entirely different and continues to evolve. I like to just also focus on the fact that my business model when I first started was nothing like what it is today. So that's the thing, you need to be dynamic, because the only thing that's actually constant is change.
Mhm.